Hi, welcome to Holding Space. I'm Caleb Mayo. This is my brother John Mayo,
Hello.
and UFOs are real. So we're going to talk about UFOs being real and process that crazy information together and with you to the extent you'd like to participate. So, hi, John. I'm going to ask you a few questions about this, and I thought I'd start with how are you feeling today, generally?
Generally, okay. I don't know, a little agitated. I was just trying to do some cleanup, and it didn't go well. And I have a big pile of crap outside I have to clean up. I don't know. I'm okay.
We'll call that a 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
Um, so, I thought as an on ramp, we could ask what your entry point to the phenomenon has been and what got you to where you are, even if it's just the highlight reel of that, because I'm sure you've done a lot of reading and watching in the last several months.
Yeah. I think the quick version is like growing up in the 90s, was into conspiracy theory stuff and reading about UFOs and paranormal stuff, but then like kind of got off the train when I started reading some of the crazier conspiracy theories, and then moved away from that. And then really it was the Leslie Kane, Ralph Blumenthal piece from and Helene Cooper piece from 2017. That was like very, very exciting. Then I also read Interstellar by Avi Loeb, and that was, that ramped me up a little bit. And then it was really the Grush story. And then I immediately, like, the Grush story dropping, and then I immediately bought Leslie Kane's excellent book, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. And that book really was like the point of no return, of reading it, of picking it up and being like this will be interesting. And then within the first chapter, just being like, holy shit, which is about the Belgium wave.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's it. And from that point, I just haven't really. It's been like 60 to 80% of my brain at all times, like thinking about this. So yeah,
Yeah, it kind of makes other things less interesting by
how,
comparison.
how does this work? Do I now ask you the same question?
I was thinking I would ask you the questions today, but feel free
Okay,
to ask anything you'd like when you want to.
okay.
So the next sort of series of the big questions I'd like to cover are: how are you thinking about the phenomenon in general, big picture? How are you thinking about the cover up? And how are you thinking about the skeptical conventional wisdom? And then if you'd like to cover anything else like cool things you've seen or read recently, or end with a crazy story, maybe that would be a good coda. But I guess I'll start with just, it feels like the double barrel question that we tend to tiptoe around in these conversations, and that even a lot of the what you'd call like mainstream ufology tends to tiptoe around, because it's just such a weird speculative area. Is what do you think is going on with the phenomenon, and how are you thinking about that, to be more polite slash oblique?
Man, I mean, I don't know, and I feel like I'm in the. I had the experience that I think most people have when they get into it, uh of it just becoming like very complicated and woolly and strange and varied so quickly when you start getting into it, that it, like, you know like, 6 months ago I probably would have said like ETs, and now I don't know. It's just so much weirder than like it's. I don't think it's one entity. I don't think it's one explanation. So I guess to how I'm thinking about the phenomena right now, and I'm reading Dolan's book right now, the one from 73 to 91, big thick volume. It's very cool. But as I'm reading it, and I'm reading stories of encounters, I'm kind of just like, I mean, there are a lot of them. Some are very interesting, but I'm just sort of like, I don't need them anymore to hear. It's not like it's not like I need to be convinced that the phenomenon is real, and it's also not like I am going to go so deep that I'm going to like pull out patterns and come up with theories that like some of these, really serious long-term experts in the field are doing. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I guess I'm in a place where I'm not really reaching for an explanation. I mean, I could make something up though. Like, I mean, I don't know. Should I just keep talking? Should I make something up? I don't know.
Feel free to speculate.
I mean, it seems unlikely to me that they are interstellar and took like hundreds or thousands of years to get here and then got to our planet and are just like hanging out on hidden bases on the moon or hidden bases, or like under the water or something. I kind of have a hard time squaring those. Just, I mean, and baseline, like, who fucking knows? And like, it's all so like, it's obviously something we like really don't understand. So it's hard to speculate about something you don't understand at all. That like, there's so many indicators that it's just so beyond our comprehension. And the answer will probably be something that revolutionizes our understanding of the universe. So, like, but from my current human perspective in 2024, it seems like a long drive to then stay in the parking lot. So that leads me to think that either faster than light travel is possible, that they're coming from wherever their home planets are, and they can just like dip in and out whenever they want. Which obviously is like, not how we think the universe works now. And then I guess that, or that they've been around for a really, really long time, and maybe like, and then, the interdimensional or whatever hypothesis, which I like really fundamentally don't understand. But yeah, seems plausible. I don't know. And then lastly, I do love the idea. I just like the idea that they're maybe living like in the ocean. And that's I don't remember where I encountered this idea. It might have been Dolan, but I think it's really interesting that like if you're visiting other planets, atmospheres vary widely. But if there's a liquid ocean, that's actually pretty predictable environment. I don't know if that's true, but I heard somebody say this. And also protects you from solar flares and shit like that. So it would maybe make perfect sense to go to a planet and then just post up underwater.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's a really strong, interesting observation. There's a ton of different atmospheric quality out there in the universe, but liquid water is always liquid water.
Yeah.
So whatever your equipment is can be designed to work mostly in that atmosphere, and maybe under other kinds of liquids as well. It sounds like if the interdimensional hypothesis is real, or is accurate, then the faster than light travel door opens, because you could be moving along the fifth dimension and it would look like you were traveling faster than the speed of light in the third or fourth dimension. So it could be the case. Like there have been some speculations, people have made speculations about tourism, and that seems like the kind of thing that would maybe want to happen faster. Because yeah, it's a little hard to imagine tourism happening at the glacial pace of like 100,000 years to go see one planet. But as you say, that's like on our current human time scale, and it's hard to know what it might feel like if you're like a mind in a vat that's been living for millions of years or something. Maybe 100,000 year safari isn't so strange.
One idea I'll share quickly with you that I just heard on, I guess it was on the Weaponized podcast, but one of Dolan's theories was like, Earth is the place to be right now. That like that if you're an intelligent species and you're studying other planets, like Earth is where the action is like his opinion, as somebody who's studied thousands and thousands of cases and written voluminously about it, which I just think is an interesting idea.
That is really interesting. I agree. And it kind of jives with some stuff that I've bumped into in researching futurism and AI, because we have this like rational expectation that our time should be basically normal, and we're living in a deeply not normal time. So like in most times, in most places, it is reasonable to assume that you're living through normal times, and this particular moment, even this 10 years of human life, is very, very unusual. Specifically, I would say because the computational ability of our machines is starting to exceed the computational ability of our brains, and like we're already probably crossing that threshold at the upper end of the machines, and by the end of this decade it's going to be like getting toward a place where like at least corporations can afford this kind of human surplus brain power in machine form. It's probably going to coincide with the dawn of AGI, whatever. That this is like a very interesting moment. Like some people would maybe kind of call it the singularity, but whatever it is, it's very interesting. And I've also heard this pitched as a reason to believe in simulation hypothesis, that because this is an unreasonably interesting time, that's some evidence, at least in the column, for this being a simulation, because you would tend to, if you were simulating reality, simulate especially interesting moments, and this is clearly a very interesting moment. But I think that also backs up this idea that it might be a hot tourist location, because you're getting to watch a species leave just sort of the dark ages, where we couldn't fly and control nuclear energy. Like 100 years ago, we didn't have planes. Like, it's crazy. And now we've got, this video air communication and a million other things that are bursting on the scene. This is just like a fascinating century. So I buy the idea that Earth right now is outsizedly interesting, and that, maybe aliens like to go to places like this, because there are probably some other planets in the galaxy and broader universe where moments like this are happening. And this would also kind of jive with observations that visitation has intensified in the last 100 years, that as you go back into the preceding hundreds and thousands of years, there's some evidence that visitation has been ongoing, but it does seem like it's picked up since like the nuclear age began. And that sort of stands to reason if they're here to watch a technological explosion, and or just monitor the emergence of a potentially galactic or intergalactic civilization.
Yeah, I guess to just circle back to the question of how I'm thinking about this, like that is all very plausible, and also like not sufficiently weird and not complex enough to explain all the different stuff. Like, okay, they're here because humans are very interesting right now, so like let's steal a bunch of cow rectums, like or like, yeah, I don't know. Let's kidnap a bunch of people and like do kind of like course medical examinations on them, and let's do it like thousands of times, maybe past the point that it could like really be giving you any sort of scientific value.
It's just for giggles at this point. I don't know. That kind of instinct feels possible to me, but I don't feel super strongly about it, just based on how we work scientifically when we're studying animals. Like we don't seem to reach a point where we stop giving a shit. Like there are people right now doing research on like mealworms and roosters and blue whales and whatever. Like obviously blue whales are interesting, but like we study all sorts of animal life forms and we keep doing it. So sometimes people make this claim that like there's a limit to how much science you could do on humans, and so like it's unreasonable to believe that aliens might continue to do that. That doesn't square with me, for me, with the way that we conduct science on other life forms. It seems like we might continue to be interesting. And also there's this idea out there, at least based on the John Mack book, that maybe there are other things than just science going on with these abductions. Like maybe there's a genetic, not just research, but like genetic propagation component. I've never used that phrase before, but it's actually like the least weird way of saying that they're like collecting gametes from people, like sperm and eggs, and making hybrid babies or just like more human babies. Maybe that stuff's all completely zany anyway. but it sort of opens the door to another realm of activity that isn't just research.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, we left this out, but it seems pretty clear based on some of the reporting about especially visitations of nuclear sites that there's some sort of military analysis component to some of the visitations, that they're like keeping an eye on us. They do tend to pop up disproportionately around our military installations. It's possible that's just because we record things more there and we've got people like with high-tech sensors operating there. But it's also possible
transition into
that they're doing intelligence.
Transition into the second question, I think.
Okay, great. Well, so let's talk about the cover-up. How are you thinking about it, and how does it make you feel?
Do you want to finish your train you were on there first?
No, just they may be conducting military intelligence research. I think that's a reasonable assumption.
Yeah, I think that's that seems pretty clear, and that they're interested in military. I guess one of the where these two questions tie in for me is that like I don't like I feel like there's I'm pretty confident that there's a bunch more information that some people know and that is being withheld from broader civilization. And so, when I'm thinking about the phenomenon, then that is sort of the like moment of frustration for me that then gets me sort of spinning off and thinking about the cover up instead. Because I don't know, I guess the like how it makes me feel is like pretty angry and like pretty appalled, and also I guess like titillated and like excited on some level, and it does feel like it's like the wheels are coming off, and like yeah, so that's my baseline answer of how it makes me feel. It's like pretty pissed off and like shocked and appalled. Like you, I'm a like good government guy. Like I think government is cool and how we come together. So it's really disturbing to think that some corners and some extra governmental entities are withholding like basic reality from us. Yeah,
I've been thinking about that basic aspect a lot. Just why can't you tell us the simple, glossy thing on top of it? And I think the answer is because it just opens the rabbit hole, and you have to go down it once you acknowledge that there's a real thing happening here. It also seems like some people in these organizations are trying to acknowledge that basic reality. But that is a position I keep circling around. Like, I understand the national security imperatives of keeping a bunch of the secret, but I full-heartedly reject the idea that the phenomenon itself at large has to be secret. I think that's like deeply unfair, and I get really upset about it too. Like, I would like for presidents to just tell us we're working on this, but we gotta tell you that something's going on here, and we would like the best scientists in the world to collaborate with us on figuring out what it is.
Yeah.
That seems like where we're going here is we're trying to get to a world where this is robustly scientifically investigated, and like a big part of what the sort of curious apparatus of civilization is oriented toward and around, and encountering and digging and explaining and exploding. There's so much interesting stuff here that it's really frustrating that they can't tell us anything. And I guess I want to just ping this possibility, which feels slim to me, but I think there's sort of some motivated reasoning behind that this bunny hole goes way deeper than I want it to. And I have sort of the vision of it where they're covering up craft and they're aliens that built this stuff, and that's about it. And that's like, I think that might be kind of an optimistic vision of what they're covering up. And certainly it seems like, what was that? Sorry.
I agree. I think that is an
Mm.
optimistic view.
Yeah, you alluded earlier to sort of a deeper complexity here that we don't have our hands around yet. And that seems right to me based on the little that I know about Valet's work and other people who have spent a really long time with this, who walk away thinking this is way stranger than just aliens and spaceships. Even if it is aliens and spaceships, it also has implications for our understanding of consciousness and certainly physics. And that stuff alone broadens and deepens the mystery in a way that just saying aliens are here might not do justice to. But then there's this like lower percentage, like every now and then you hear people say things like you and I've been calling this like the breakaway civilization hypothesis, that there's like a very robust system going on
Yeah.
somewhere where this like
This is the most
technology has been
disturbing thing.
incorporated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is the most disturbing, and it feels like the lowest probability. But I when I say that, I hear myself and I think, do I just want it to be low probability, or do I genuinely think that? And I have to say, I think that that the fact that they won't tell us, or they haven't been able to just even try to tell us a glossy version of this, like the simple version,
Yeah.
is, to me, falls maybe not as evidence, but as like a tick in the column of it being possible that there's like a really scary, deep component to this situation that they really don't know how to explain to us, or they're worried that we can't even confront, or maybe that the deep component itself is obstructing information about. So I don't want that to be true, but I'm just like putting a little dot on the board as a fact that it's as an indication that it's possible. Like the blanket secrecy seems to me as to be potentially an indication that the powers that be think we can't handle the deeper truth of the situation. And it may be that they just don't think we can handle the regular level truth, that like the alien thing they think will blow our minds and
Yeah.
destabilize the world. And I think there's some good work to suggest, like by those political scientists in late toward the end of the Kane book, have a pretty good theory about why governments might not want to reveal this stuff, because for one thing, it undermines their earthly authority. And I kind of buy that idea. I also think, for what it's worth, that there's a strong element of just inertia here. Like it has
Yeah.
been secret for a really long time,
Yeah.
and they don't have a really strong reason to make it public. So it's going to keep being secret until they have a really strong reason to make it public. And I think we're tiptoeing toward getting that strong reason, just by the fact that people like you and I think this is real when 5 years ago we didn't think there was anything to see here. That's some indication, because we're relative newbies to this field. Like we should say that there are people who have been deep in this for 30 years, and there are a
Yeah.
lot of people like us who are just waking up to its reality at all.
Philistines, right? That's the word. I mean, I used to go back in like 2011. I would go on the MUFON website like regularly, either MUFON or NICAP. I can't remember which one, and just like look at the latest abduction cases or UFO sightings that people submit. There's like a
Oh,
date
wow.
you could look at. So I would drop in on that every now and then. I mean, I am still I the co-sign. I'm also a newcomer to this field, but I don't know. I like it a lot, and I have for a long time. I have a question for you. So, thinking about it, like a really and especially like disturbing or insidious version of the cover up. Um, what upsets you more? And I'll posit two disturbing possibilities to you about the cover up. But feel free to make your own adventure if you want. One that like the cover up, in order to stay covered up, has like killed people, or yeah, like threatened people, like ruined lives, left a trail of um, just destroyed or murdered people potentially. And that's something that like David Grush has intimated, or the idea, and actually I'm going to throw into that basket an even crazier idea, which is Nah, never mind. I was going to talk about psionics and children and like, trying to like, I don't know, kidnap people into some field of blah, blah, blah. Let's just say that like
Mhm.
killing people to keep the cover up, or the idea that maybe they have made scientific breakthroughs and maybe like really big ones and have been keeping them secret for possibly decades, which is an idea that like serious people put forth.
Yeah, it's really hard to grapple with that second thing because you just look around and wonder where those things are. Like, it's not that we haven't made amazing advances in the last 20 years, but physicists will tell you that the advances at the edge of like experimental science have been less amazing than some of our just like internet social tech, which is weird. Like,
Yeah,
it's strange that we have borderline AGI and we're still like stuck with no unified theory of physics.
yeah,
Uh, so especially the gap between looking at these things and having expert pilots describe them as like nothing that we have anything close to technologically, and then just like our regular prosaic physical science, like the outer edge of which is being able to land rockets, which we couldn't do 5 years ago. That's weird. It feels like, to be honest, it's a little hard to buy the idea
yeah.
that we've like gotten a lot of tech and like secretly we have anti-gravity, but we're just for some reason not using it. Like,
Uh-huh.
there are lots of places where we would want to use this stuff. And I think not least, like we have two active hot wars happening right now. And maybe we are using tech like this in ways that we can't see. Excuse me. But that seems sort of unlikely to me. It also feels like uh, odd that we do, sorry, have a lot of hoopla around what we consider to be our like edge tech, like whatever the new, are we at like F-18s or
Yeah.
F-35s or F-6? I don't know what the latest breed of jet is that we have, but like we spend billions of dollars building them. They're like $1 billion each or something.
Yeah.
And we're like kind of oorah about that. Like, we make movies about them. And it just seems weird to me, like that then all would have to be a psyop on some level if we did have this like deeper, way more
No,
powerful tech.
it's just completely separate. It just
Mm,
doesn't even know about this other progress that's happening. And I think the argument would be that like if we did have something, you know, uh really, really powerful, that it would be a like a true trump card, like break glass in case of emergency kind of thing that you would not burn on like a
mm.
simple geopolitical opportunity or
Okay.
threat like
Yeah.
Ukraine or even Iraq and Afghanistan, that it's like something like if we did have something, it would be there would have been never anything like it in game theory or
Mm.
military theory. So like you hold off until you really need it. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a solid analogy there in nuclear weapons. We have a lot of nuclear weapons. We
Yeah,
do not use nuclear weapons.
yeah.
Where were you going to go?
I can't remember now. Something about the cover up. Um,
I did want to say, I think lives have been ruined. I think there's
yeah,
like a pretty clear trail of breadcrumbs
yeah,
suggesting that that's been the case, which sucks,
yeah.
obviously sucks. And it's another reason that the disclosure is so hard, because
Right.
it's presumably going to be the beginning of a long truth and reconciliation project, which like may take multiple decades to complete because there's so much bullshit and bad behavior under all of this.
And I just don't trust that
Nobody
it'll
wants to
ever
start
come
that.
out. It won't come out fully ever, I don't think. I mean, I so
Yeah,
a few more
I
thoughts about the
agree.
cover up. One, I don't think that I buy slow disclosure. I'm like slow disclosure curious, but
Mm,
the idea that we're in some like kind of managed campaign and that like some of the public figures that we see are assets, and I
mm,
don't I there's just so many indications that there's like a sweaty, freaked out scramble happening. Um,
mm.
and I don't think that they're that organized in that direction. yet.
Hmm.
I think they have lots of plans of how to keep it secret, but not, I don't think, plans about how to get it out. Then the next thing is that what it seems to me is going on is that there's like two factions of people with this information and people close to it, or two main factions. One of them wants to keep it covered up, and one of them thinks it's time to reveal it. And it seems like we're seeing a struggle play out between these two factions. And it, like, I don't know, this is probably naive, but like I kind of like disclosure's chances right now, for some kind of disclosure.
Yeah, just the fact that Schumer put non-human intelligence in his legislation last year, even though they didn't pass that legislation, just suggests that there are people trying to make this happen, and that disclosure's got a shot, and that somebody knows something, because Schumer doesn't put that in there if it's just a total fishing expedition.
Yeah.
Suggests to me that the circle of people who know that something's happening has gotten wider in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Okay, last thing I'll say about the cover up is that my hope would be, my like fantasy would be that there is that there's a room somewhere of like a multidisciplinary group of people, experts, trying to figure out how we disclose, and like how we talk about it, what language we use, what then are the like diplomatic implications, how do we help society onboard this, and how do we help individuals onboard this. And what I'm basically thinking about is like, the movie Arrival, where they go and find Amy Adams, the linguist, at the beginning of the movie, and are like, we need a language expert. Like, I want that, but I also want like, or also like when the government brings in like filmmakers to be like, imagine terrorist attacks for us. I want that, but I want it for like psychologists, like I don't know, anthropologists, storytellers, folklore experts, like writers and artists. And it's got to be a small room, and I don't know who you get to be there, but I want
Tom
DeLonge, George Lucas, Ken Burns. I don't know. I don't know who you get, but I think that room needs to exist. And if anybody's pulling that room together, it's probably the White House.
And you're speculating that this room might exist, or you're just
I feel like there's a chance maybe that there's I think probably no, but
yeah, I think probably no also.
But I think
like, they're not going to be able to. Go ahead.
I just think it's needed.
I totally agree with that. And I sort of had the thought while you were saying that this action that we're taking right now is part of like the Invisible College attempt to replicate that, or to create that out here. And I think DeLonge has definitely been doing that himself, like trying to tell the story through multiple media formats, and encourage other people to do that. And I think there are other people on this mission, which rocks. But I agree with you that it would be great if it were coming from inside the house, that like if people, what would be ideal is if people close to this information could share it in some way that would allow storytellers to spread the word. But also that vision would require a dual citizenship track, right? Like a second-class citizens, we're all second-class citizens who don't know the secret, and then like a couple of artists get invited to be first-class citizens who know the real thing, and then like slowly tell us all about it. I don't know. First of all, that kind of annoys me, even though I think you're right that it would be a good idea. But secondly, I don't think they're going to be capable of doing that until they've ripped the Band-Aid off, like until we have at least gotten to the level where we all know that this is real. But at that point, when they've said we have craft from non-human intelligence, maybe it would make sense to set up a presidential commission to start exploring this stuff with psychological and anthropological and narrative elements, At that point, like society is going to want to do that, I think, and so it would make sense for government to have a role in that. But like the CIA hiring George Lucas in the meantime, although it sounds cool, seems both unlikely and a little bit unfair to me. Although again, I agree with your basic assertion that it would probably help.
Well, somebody's going to have to have this conversation with themselves, I guess, and that's speechwriter, like whoever's writing the speech where this gets, where presumably, like, you know, eventually a president is going to give a speech about this, and like, what the fuck do you say, you know?
Yeah. And that's a big reason that nobody's said it so far. We've heard a couple people make this point. I think, like, not least John Lear, probably in the 80s, made this point that it's really hard to think of the next sentence. Basically, like, we know that they're here and ... question mark. Like, we don't know how to defend you from them. We don't know what they want or where they're from. We don't know how their technology works. Anyway, over to you, civilization. Like, that feels like the kind of thing that a government almost definitionally can't do, because its role is to protect and inform and support us. And if it were to inform us that it couldn't protect and support us, then like that would be sort of self-defeating. I guess I did want to touch finally on is how you're feeling about the conventional skeptical wisdom, which I think it's distinct from the cover-up, but it follows from the cover-up because the cover-up has been effective, basically. And it may be the case that we're not running psyops now, but if you read into this a little bit like you and I have, you quickly find that the Air Force and probably the CIA and other bodies of the government have engaged in disinformation campaigns about this over the years to make it seem like there's no there. Swamp gas is like the most famous meme in this space, but you know, there are lots of examples of discrediting the general idea of this area of inquiry, and that has resulted in a world where scientists are like broadly disinterested in this, and major mainstream media is disinterested and doesn't want to cover it, and like people say the word taboo a lot. The stigma, right, is real, and then you and I and everybody else who's interested in this bumps into this regularly, just talking to friends or random people online. How are you thinking about the gulf between the people who are in this subject and like a little read into what's going on, and the people who are still sort of benignly or snarkily oblivious?
Oh man, I mean, yeah, I guess where I am like right now today is like I don't have time for them. Like, I don't, if you don't, if what frustrates me is people not finding it interesting more than anything. I've realized, and I think that if one were to read just like a little bit, just like dip your toe in, not even very far, I think it quickly becomes like the most interesting thing in the whole world. And so what frustrates me is when people aren't even interested in it. And I have a few friends that drive me batty there. I think that they're, you know, gonna have to eat crow, and like I think there's gonna be a bunch of stuff. I don't know. I think this year is gonna have some new twists and turns, and probably not full disclosure, but like I think those people will come around eventually. And I get so pissed off trying to convince them that I'm kind of divesting from that. And the one other thing that I'll say is that something that I've found is kind of a coping mechanism for me in this, but also just really fun and a kind of an entry point and a way to communicate with those people, is that I found that if I bring up UFOs, people kind of will shut down, or it's easy to laugh it off. But if you bring up like ghosts or psychics or precognition, people have a lot to say. Like basically everybody has, even if it's just my cats seem to know when I'm coming home. Like pretty much everybody has something, and that you can then get in there and then expand from there. And also you get to hear people's stories, which is fun. And also then you get people just talking about like crazy unexplained occurrences in their lives and kind of grappling with this idea that we don't know as much as we think we do.
Mm. Yeah, that specific thing is something I feel, especially in this topic area, like we've always paid lip service to, but it's really hard to actually embrace and feel. Like our ignorance, it's like something your earliest science teachers tell you. We don't know everything. And they give you like the litany of times the scientists were wrong and we discovered some new reality. But as a like felt experience, the sensation that we do know just about everything is like really hard to shake. And it takes like a high energy activation level to change us into that next space of thinking, oh damn, we maybe really don't. But when you talk about another angle in, I think one that I've been using is weird shit that we can't explain scientifically at the edge of science, like the double slit experiment where we can't decide if light is a photon or a wave, right? That's a great angle in. And Kelly Chase on the Rabbit Hole has used like the Big Bang as, or like dark energy. It's just like a great avenue in, like, oh, you think we understand the universe? No, we don't know what 94% of it is. And like the Big Bang is just like, oh, it just started in an explosion. We don't know why. And it doesn't really even make sense to ask what happened before that. So that's ridiculous. And when you start pulling at the threads of our scientific model of the world and realizing how incomplete it is, that kind of can help maybe open the door to this. I think people really don't want to grapple with the idea of the cover up because it's deeply uncomfortable and it like suggests a conspiracy model of government that we always wanted to think wasn't true, and I spent most of my life thinking isn't true. And then I think the worst of the or the hardest thing for people is getting to actual experiences and talking about like full-on abductions. Like that's something like people have deeply coded as fake, and it's like really hard to convince them that that stuff is real, even as they're getting on board with these physical objects being made by non-human intelligence.
I just had that this week. I had that experience. I had dinner with a couple of friends and was talking about this stuff, and one of them said basically, yeah, my problem with abductions is just like every time, you know, there are people who say they've been abducted, but like every one of them seems like they were pretty cracked before the abduction happened. And like, that's just not the case when you dig into it. Yeah.
Broadly debunked. Yeah, that's another thing that John Mack book does really well, is he selects the group of people he's even going to talk to after subjecting them to a barrage of psychological tests to just pick the normalist ones. People who do not have any co-occurring psychopathologies. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a long haul, and it's crazy and weird in some places, but then so is this whole subject. Thank you for taking so much of your time to go down this crazy path with me today. Would you like to like coda with a strange story or a thing you've been thinking about recently? Or do you want to just put a pin in this for the next time we have this conversation?
Man, I wish I had one. I haven't heard any new crazy. Oh, actually, no. I got one little cattle mutilation story for you from the Dolan book.
Great.
It's like I'm gonna screw up some of the details here, but the gist of it is it's like Minnesota or Wisconsin or somewhere like that. It's the dead of winter, and they find a cow in everything is covered in snow except this perfect circle, like 40 feet in diameter, with a mutilated cow in the middle of this snowless circle, and the cow has, you know, all the classic mutilation stuff, like drained of blood and there's no blood anywhere, and incision, you know, just organs removed with incredible precision. And then they like, I think the cops get in a helicopter or something, and they find like several miles away just like a ton more of these circles of missing snow.
Wow.
Just a cool image.
Yeah, and yet another thing that pings this file of imagery that we always assumed was silly, like the beam sort of like cylindrical conical beam of light coming down from one of these saucer things. Because we grew up with that iconography, it's like easy to dismiss because you've seen it in cartoons since you were a kid. So the idea that that might actually be pointing toward a real physical phenomenon is unsettling and kind of exciting in some ways, although not for the cows. Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate this. I hope we can do it again because this is an endlessly fascinating topic and should be a really interesting couple of years.
Yeah, man. Really appreciate the work you're doing here at the show.
Thank you, bro. Talk to you later.